I can.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, 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 everyone. I am Kia Brown Dudley, President of the International Literacy Association Board of Directors. I also serve as the Director of Programs and Partnerships for the Education Partners, where I collaborate with interested parties to create transformational learning opportunities and support school and communities in nurturing a love of literacy in children. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy to have you with us today for this ILA webinar on new favorites to add to your book collection. We have several speakers with us, and we are excited to get the program started. Stay tuned for details at the end of the program, as we'll have a special giveaway from one of today's event supporters. Before I introduce Kenneth Kuntz and Carl Lennertz, just a few housekeeping notes. If you are tweeting along, please remember to tag @ILA Today and use the hashtag ILA Webinar. The archived closed caption recording of this event will be available within the next 5 days. You'll be able to access that at literacyworldwide.org/digital events. Now, allow me to introduce Ken and Carl, who are going to kick off today's event with a conversation on how the Children's Book Council has reimagined the ILA choices list of the past. My dear friend, Ken Kuntz, is the immediate past president of the ILA Board of Directors. He has served as a classroom teacher, literacy coach, administrator, and teacher educator. An accomplished author and educator, he currently serves as the founder and director of For the Love of Literacy, where he works with his team of literacy changemakers to provide professional development and coaching around comprehensive literacy and ELA practices in school communities across New Jersey and the surrounding New York metropolitan area. Carl Lennertz is the executive director of the Children's Book Council and Every Child a Reader. He grew up in his hometown public and school libraries, began his career working in bookstores, and then moved to New York City to work in publishing. Without further ado, please welcome Ken and Carl.
Thank you so much, Kia. I would like to take this moment to have an opportunity to just say a few words. First of all, I hope that all of the attendees will join me in congratulating Kia Brown Dudley, who effective July 1st stepped into the role as president of the International Literacy Association Board of Directors. So please join me in congratulating Kia. I also want to thank and congratulate all of you. There is sometimes a notion that learning stops in the United States, particularly in the summer, and yet there are so many of you logging on to this webinar live and both on demand, which just shows that teachers are truly powerful change makers who are committed to kids all times of the year. As you're introducing yourself in the chat, you'll notice that we're very proud of the I in ILA. And many of you are not only from across the states, but also from around the world and catching this both live and on demand. So we'd like to welcome all of you here today. Now, I have to tell you, when this event first was realized, one of the things that we were really excited about at ILA was that Children's Choices was being transferred over to the Children's Book Council, but with a strong partnership to ILA. As a matter of fact, just to give you a little history of how this event has unfolded, when we met with our new executive director, Nicola Wedderburn, and we were also meeting with our ILA staff, Lara DeLoza, our director of communications, we were talking to Carl and we were trying to come up with ways to keep the Children's Choice Project alive and well and part of the ILA community. As a matter of fact, many of you may not know this, but I actually joined the board of directors 5 years ago as a board member and then transitioned over in the past 2 years to the executive team. And one of the things that's been really exciting about that whole participation at the board level is finding out what members in our ILA community want. And one of the things that we know that our members want is they want to know good books and good authors. They want to know what books to bring into the classroom to help their students develop their foundational skills while also developing language and a love of literacy. And they want to be able to do that on a Monday morning and have a whole list of books that will excite them about the new school year. So one of the things that you can look forward to in this event is that after we have a brief conversation about the Children's Choice Project, we're also going to be talking a little bit about all of these books and some of the authors who are so gracious to give up their time and be with us here today. So I say that to you because when we first realized this event and we're thinking about how it might take shape in the summer, we wanted teachers and literacy lovers to be able to come onto the call, learn about new books, and be excited even more about returning to the classroom. And so I want to welcome all of you here today. Now, I just want to double check. I know that Carl was having some issues with weather in his location. Lara, is Carl part of our Zoom call again?
Ken, this is Angela. He lost power.
So
he's trying to reconnect right this minute.
No problem. So I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about the Children's Choice Project and some of the ways that it's impacted my work. For many of you who know, when you go on the ILA website and you're clicking on resources, there are so many resources that ILA offers that can help your practice. Some of them include our webinars. They often include our publications like Literacy Today and our journals, and our in-person and on-demand events as well. But one of the other projects that's been really special to our community is something that we've called the Children's Choice List. And we've had the choice list, we've had the young adult choices, and we've also had the teacher choices as well. As a reading specialist, I know that, and both as a reading specialist and a literacy coach, one of the things that I find most exciting about my work is being able to go to the choice list, find great recommendations, and choose ones that I want to embed as part of my practice. Not long ago, it's actually very interesting. One of the authors who you're going to meet later, who's on this call, had a book that was featured on the choice list. And as a reading specialist, I was invited to a community where they wanted to see more of the students reflected in the materials that were used in the classrooms. Using the choice list, we were actually able to choose some really great books to develop lessons that got the teachers excited about coming back at the beginning of the school year. One of those books, which Duncan is going to share later, is called Dear Primo, A Letter to My Cousin. And in this particular project, what I thought was so exciting was that this one book spurred an excitement around literacy because the teachers started to take ownership in finding new authors and new ways of breathing life, not only into their curriculum, but also into their classroom collections. Ironically, this book became one of 16 that was part of a program in a little tiny 4-mile school district here in New Jersey, where we created something called Bienvenidos Book Club. In that project, we were able to find books that would represent all of the different countries and language spoken in this little 4-square-mile town where the kids and the teachers were excited about new books. So I wanted to share that as Carl joins us because all of you on this call play such an important role in finding new books, breathing new life into your collections and curriculum, and the ILA partnership with the Children's Book Council and of course the Choice List is one way of really realizing that in your work. So Carl, I'm so glad that you're joining us. I know that you've been having a little bit of a power issue up where you are, but tell the folks on the webinar a little bit about yourself and how you've become so, integral in this project.
Can you hear me okay? I had to bust out of the
Absolutely.
driveway, get in my car and drive down to the cell tower.
Don't feel bad. There were so many ILA calls that I've taken from my Jeep, so I know how you feel.
Yeah,
As reading specialists, we're also always on the go.
Life in rural America. Well, I've been around a long time. I won't go through my whole resume, but I was in corporate publishing for years, and I loved it. Loved working with teachers, librarians, booksellers. Then I went to the nonprofit world, World Book Night, the ABA, and then when the CBC came along 6 years ago, I'm going, I want to live in the children's book world more. I want to live in this world where, as you were talking before, the readers begin with board books, elementary picture books, middle grade. And I just love this world that we're in of the children's book world is just, it sounds naive and silly, sophomoric, but it's beautiful. And it's much more based on the thousands and thousands of teachers, librarians, and booksellers putting the books in kids' hands personally. And it's a beautiful thing. And so the CBC, we're a trade association, but we don't lobby in DC. We're not fancy. We have 6 people. We have a lot of awards, a Social Justice Prize, Eloise Greenfield Poetry Prize. But the one we do with you is our flagship. It is the one we're most proud of, the most extensive. When the awards are announced, the authors, the illustrators, publishers, agents are all very excited. And it's a wonderful resource for the next year, you know, it's hard to keep up with all the new books. And these are new published books. It's not backlist, not 2 years old. It's the new books coming along, careers being built, debut authors. And it's just, we love working with you, Ken, and everybody else there, Angela. When you created this thing in the 90s, and we came along as just a facilitator, and now we're, you know, deep into partnership, and it's really great.
Carl, I'm so glad that you said that. You know, I've leaned on this resource for many years, and one of the biggest challenges that we have in education is that when we're trying to become better at our practice, oftentimes you have to really have that excitement and that buy-in in order to buy into the practices. And one of the things that I found really valuable about these lists and collections are, number one, it's almost like they're magically contagious, that when you expose your school communities to these new authors and new books, people are so excited. I have curriculum directors who purchase every book that I recommend. We have teachers who are excited about, you know, using these new materials in their classrooms. Now I ask you, because many of our attendees on the call may or may not know, you know, it really is something when you're a reading coach or you're a teacher and you're able to make book recommendations from a trusted and reputable source, like these lists, there's more buy-in in the school community and there's more of an excitement around literacy. How do these books become part of this final selection that teachers can peruse from? And I know that no list is ever the list or the end-all be-all, but these lists have been really special for our community, and our ILA members on the member survey tell us that not only they're aware of them, they use them. How did these lists become curated in this way?
Well, the kids curate them, which is the most pure thing of all. The teachers do as well, and we've added a librarian component, but it's the kids. And Ken, the other part, the lists have reflected the changing world we're in, thank goodness, the changing publishing. You know, in the last 10 years, there's been a call for many more, the diversity of publishing. The Lee and Low survey has shown that there weren't enough books by and about people of color, gender identity, ability, socioeconomic status. So these lists reflect what's being published. And we ask our 125 publishing members to submit books that aren't the big bestsellers, that are in-house favorites. You know, I've been around long enough that word of mouth begins inside a publishing house. People love the book. It seems they begin there, and then we talk to teachers, librarians, and booksellers. Then that's the next stage of word of mouth. So the curation begins in-house from a much more diverse pool of books being published from the large houses. We've also added 50 publisher members who are doing 5-10 books a year, Spanish bilingual, South Asian books. Ken, I'm very excited about the publishing landscape right now, you know, because 6 years ago, we had a problem, and the problem is being addressed. And I'm really happy to see this change. And the kids see it and see themselves on the pages. And I think that's really important.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I know that work has definitely transformed what I do as a reading coach, where years ago, that wasn't the focus of a lot of the work that's taking place. And now that seems to be the cornerstone of a lot of the requests that I get, especially because, at least in the state where I'm working in New Jersey, this need for more diverse books is actually written into our state law. We now have a state law that requires K-12 students to be engaged in diverse texts and diverse literature and written by diverse authors from different lived experiences. And so, but then we also have a lot of ILA members who come onto our webinars who are sort of really frustrated by the things happening in their states. And so it's really interesting to see the disparities depending upon the context of where folks are working. I'm curious, like you had mentioned a few months ago when we met with you and Nicola and the ILA team, that there have been a lot of exciting updates regarding these lists. And I know you've mentioned that more of an attention to diversity is one of those non-negotiables. What are some of the other updates with this project that you're excited about?
And Ken, to your point, diversity is not a checklist item for us. It's where we start. We don't continue a program. We don't continue a program or create a new one without, that's number one. And number two, we don't call it a diversity trend, it's a movement. And I think we're all part of this movement. And it's really wonderful to see. So I think the biggest change working with you all, ILA created this and had coordinators go into the schools and school libraries. And when the pandemic changed that, it was time for a redo. Tracy Hall, the CEO of the ALA goes, now that the pandemic is over, let's just get back in the car and keep driving. Let's rethink everything. So the one thing I wanted to do was to go from 7 local school districts and expand it to at least 35 states, at public libraries, and at a few independent booksellers who were in the community. Our first military base, Joint Andrews military base. And really, people had to apply every year. We had 250 applications for 68 spots. And it's rural, suburban, urban, a team working on it. So we've gone from relying on your coordinators who did such amazing work over the years. And some of them are still with us, by the way. We're going in and carrying the books in to now a team on site, schools, school libraries. I'm a small town kid from, really small town where the school library was my home and the public library in town was my home. So one of the choices now favors to come out of at least 35 states that represented America and have more kids see more books. We had a record number of votes this year.
I think that's amazing that you're so student-centered in this work as well. Not only student-centered, but also community-based. I find that when we're designing new lessons as teachers and working with kids and communities, they're often the ones that are the most honest to give feedback about the books they love, the materials they love working with. And so, when the students have that high level of engagement, you can almost, spice up some of the, I hate to use the word rigor, but you can work with the state standards that you have, the local standards, just to really be able to work on those skills and strategies in a way that doesn't feel like work to them. It just feels like a high engagement. And I think the books are the magical ingredient to that.
Yeah.
You take away the football from the football team, you can't really have such a great practice. And so
they're new, they're brand new with the covers. They're not, the previous nonprofit I worked in, we were working with kids in schools and one kid said, I had not seen a book that wasn't covered in tape, and now it's heartbreaking. These are new books, not the old classics. They're really fresh with authors like our speakers today, really working in diving into American history in a fun way. We've had some graphic novels into the YA mix, the young adult mix, which is great. So the books are changing with the times, and thank goodness.
That's wonderful. I think that's so important too, because if the students are excited about new materials, the teachers are also going to get excited too. I know as a teacher, having taught a grade level for numerous years in a row, it can sometimes be hard to get excited about that same old novel that's part of your curriculum. But having some freedom of choice and being able to bring new life into that curriculum is really important. For those of you who are on the call, one of the tips that we like to give at ILA is that when you're using some of our resources, including the choices list, it's really wonderful when you can find a thought partner in your school community to, first of all, not only let them know about the work of ILA because you're already part of this wonderful community, but to also sort of have a shared experience in developing those lessons and read alouds together. I know that, Carl, for me, I'm very lucky because I have a team of coaches who I get to work with. And so when we're using this list, we'll oftentimes have a planning session together for about an hour where we'll use one book and then we'll all come back together with everything that we've wanted to do to teach kids using through that literature. And I think that it's very powerful when you're part of a community of practice where you can develop those materials and not feel like you're alone and on an island.
It's also fun, the kids vote. And that's a great social studies lesson in itself, right?
It's so funny that you bring that up. We have one of the schools that I work with was actually doing book clubs, and they were using a number of the books from their school curriculum. And the teacher had asked me about the students being excited about mysteries. And I won't say the title right now just because, but I'll put it in the chat in a little while. But I said, why not try this one from the ILA choice list? Because some of the schools that I work with, the kids are obsessed about this book. And the teacher actually emailed me a couple of weeks ago before the school year ended. And he said, Dr. Ken, I just have to let you know that the fourth graders in my class voted on that one as their favorite for the year. So yeah, you just don't know the ripple effect of the impact of the work that you're doing, Carl. You've been doing so much with this project. Is there anything that stands out about this year's list that you're particularly excited about? Or?
Well, the other fun part, the list, the ILA choices had 25 books per age group. We expanded to 40 at the last minute because the voting by the students has a huge block in the middle that, I looked at book number 28, 29, 35. I'm going, I can't, I can't not include these. And we were getting also into more independent presses, Orca, Planting Justice, Cinco Punto. And I wanted, part of our diversity thing is also diversity in publishing, in geography, publisher size. So expanding the number of books in each category was a plus. Having the librarian as a separate category for the first time was a plus. And it's just in our other work at CBC with Every Child a Reader, which is the National Ambassador Program, where Jason Reynolds or Meg Medina goes out and talks to kids personally. But there's only so many places you can visit. And we do Children's Book Week with 2,500 schools, libraries, and bookstores. That's a 1 week. This ILA Choices, now CBC Favorites, just feels like a more fresh, new, organic, changing with the times. Everybody touching a book together and reading it and talking about it in the class. And it's yes, Ken, it's fun to see the difference between what the books love, the kids love, and the teachers. The teachers need a little more serious history. The kids loved one of our guests today, Pooper Snooper, about a dog who is able to sense environmental changes. But come on, best title of the year, along with Creepy Crayons and Jason Reynolds' books. But half the books overlapped and the other half were different. And that was just great.
I have to tell you, that was such a funny experience. As a coach, I'm always looking for the books that help me sort of teach the standards that I'm expected to teach and to help my students become stronger readers and writers, especially with those foundational skills. And yet, when I look at the books that the kids choose, when I see poop in the title and some of those other funny phrases in the titles, I always feel kind of silly when I'm giving them to the curriculum directors. But I have to tell you, it's amazing when you're working with such great, passionate individuals who are looking to expand literacy in their community, just how committed they are. One of the things that I found, at least in my work as a coach, is that oftentimes folks will think that buying books in one particular year or one particular snapshot for either a grade level or a school is sort of like a one and done experience. And what I found is that some of my highest performing schools in the state are those schools where the curriculum directors open their budgets to continuously breathing life into their library collections. Because, like you said, new books come out every year. And what makes this list special is that they're brand new and they help get both teachers and the kids really excited about literacy learning. Are there any other ways that this project might impact some of our membership that you'd like to share so folks know how they can get involved or where they can find resources?
Well, I think the main thing is just to be able to use the resource once we announce it. We have to do a better job getting the list out there. We do an email blast, we post it, we create a PDF. We actually promoted the names of the schools after the fact of who participated. So using the resource is the best indication of success. And for the first time, we really encourage the authors and illustrators to announce it in their social media. So our three guests today, were heard in the news and they're very excited. Their publishing house was excited. And it's a snowball effect of, I know we're getting to veering to publishing marketing here, but you want each author and illustrator of these beautiful books to proudly say, I'm a CBC Favorites winner. We're getting that noted on the websites more often. We ask every publisher to, a lot of books have all the different awards. We wanted the Children's Book Council Children's Favorite Award to be one of the ones that's equally noted on the website for all time for each book. So more promotion and marketing on our end to make people more aware of the resource.
I love it. So for those of you who are on our webinar, I know that our ILA staff have been putting a lot of resources into the chat for you. If you're able to download these and share them and tweet them and broadcast them in your school communities, getting the word out there would be really, really helpful. I know, Carl, one of the authors who was part of the choice list actually ended up Skyping with one of the groups that I was working with. And the kids actually gave the author a round of applause, and it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen because they were so excited. Many of those kids actually identified as writers themselves, even just after that one visit. So the magic is truly alive in this project. Keeping that in mind, we are going to be transitioning in just a moment over to the authors who are really the heart and soul of this project. Carl, before we do that, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our attendees today?
I just want to thank the ILA for thinking of this. I mean, you created it. And we were facilitator for a long time, and now we're carrying the ball. And I'm glad we're still working together and in touch. And we should keep brainstorming about how we can help each other spread the word about the love of reading, diverse voices. There's more work to be done. And we can do that together.
I couldn't agree more, Carl. And we have a number of ILA board members who are actually part of this webinar as well today. And they are certainly advocates for high quality literature and supporters of our children's rights to read too, which advocate for access to books as one of the core principles of what it takes to help a child become a really great reader. So Carl, with that being said, we're going to welcome our current president of the board, Kia, back on, and we have a special set of authors that are lined up for you. So thank you, Carl, for your time, for your continued leadership on this amazing project. And at ILA, we couldn't be prouder to continue to work in partnership with you to support all of the choices. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and everybody there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken and Carl. Now we'll be joined by Paula Young Shelton. Paula is a teacher, author, wife, and most important, mother of 3 extraordinary human beings. An early childhood teacher for over 30 years, she has taught in a rural village in East Africa, the public schools of Atlanta, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. In addition to the favorites list, the CBC also co-publishes the Notable Social Studies Trade Books for Young People's list. Paula's most recent book, Just Like Jesse Owens, published by Orchard Books, is featured on this year's list. Please welcome Paula Young Shelton.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate that. It is really exciting to be here. And I want to congratulate you, Kia, especially for your new role. I can't wait to see how impactful you will be in making this organization have an even greater influence on our teachers. I have always enjoyed coming to the ILA. conference as a teacher. Emmett, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I wanted to just, I really am delighted to be here. This has always been one of my favorite conferences for professional development because I always knew that I would leave with good ideas, with inspiration, and new resources. And I know that having high quality, historically accurate, representative, and diverse literature is key to good teaching. And I was so excited to see Duncan Tonatiuh on the program today. I've been a big fan of his books and have used them frequently to teach important lessons in my classroom. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation. And I can't wait to hear about Jennifer Keats Curtis, because I am always looking for new books as well. So I'd like to begin by just telling you a little bit about how this story came to be. My dad, Andrew Young, is a storyteller, and he used stories to teach us important lessons throughout my childhood. It was his way to relate his values in a way that really stuck with us. The Jesse Owens story was one that he told us over and over again to convey how important it was for you to work hard, focus on your goals, and believe in yourself. Just like Jesse Owens is the story of my dad growing up in a diverse neighborhood in a segregated New Orleans during the 1930s. When my dad saw Nazis saluting Hitler right down the street, my grandfather explained to him that racism was a sickness and that he had an obligation to help all people. Then he took him to the movie theater to see the newsreel of Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics. And it inspired my father to a lifetime of public service. The wonderful author and editor, Andrea Pinkney, heard my dad tell that story, and she told him that he had to write the book. Well, my dad explained that he did not write children's books, but he gladly passed that honor on to me. So I had the privilege of writing this book with my dad, and it was such a joy to work with him on this book and to hear this story and a whole lot more over and over again. I was also thrilled to see the book really come to life with Gordon C. James illustrations. This award-winning illustrator did such an excellent job of creating beautifully vivid and dynamic illustrations, which I would like to share with you now as I read a portion of the book. So I'm going to try to share my screen so that you can see the illustrations from the book. And just, because I'm a teacher, I like to read and read a little bit of it to you. Just like Jesse Owens. I ran and ran and ran. Head up, back straight, eyes focused. Just like my daddy taught me. My feet pounded against the dirt. My heart pounded in my chest as I headed toward my target. I knew I could catch him. Jimmy Ray was bigger, but I was faster. He tried to dodge me, but I was too quick. Tag, you're it. I took off in the other direction. Jimmy Ray fell to the ground. He rolled over and jumped up, looking around for me. But I was gone, and there was no way he was going to catch me. Then JD started. You never get me, yeah. Jimmy Ray glanced his way. He knew JD was right. That country boy was used to running from alligators in the Louisiana swamps. Nah, 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 JD taunted. That's when Jimmy Ray picked up a rock. I bet I can knock your block off, he threatened. We froze. I was pretty sure Jimmy Ray could do it. That boy had a good arm. He was always the first to get picked when we played baseball. Luckily, just then, our friend Norby hopped over the old wooden fence. Look what I've got here, he sang in his Irish accent. There was a shiny new nickel in the palm of his hand. Everyone ran to see what he had, forgetting who was chasing who. Where'd you get that from? I asked, as if I didn't know. My Aunt Ida paid me not to play with you, Andy. She was always telling him not to play with those colored boys. But Norby didn't pay her no never mind. See, there was segregation all over New Orleans. White folks on one side, black folks on the other. But not on the playground. 'Cause kids didn't care what color you were. What mattered most was how fast you could run and tag, how hard you could hit a baseball, and how far you could throw it. So we kept on running, tagging, and throwing until supper time. So that is just a little introduction to my story. And I see this book as, as a teacher, I'm always using literature to start lessons and to teach lessons. And I think that there are really many ways that you can use this book to teach important lessons and values. It is the story really of two African-American men, one who inspired the other, both of whom went on to great accomplishments despite the obstacles. The story of Jesse Owens, Olympic athlete, is one of courage, determination, and perseverance. And this book is an introduction to this historical figure and a reminder to not let what others think of you stop you from reaching your goal. It's also the story of Andrew Young, who was inspired as a child to dedicate his life to helping others. And he became a minister, a civil rights activist, a congressman, an ambassador, a mayor, and a philanthropist. He hasn't done so bad in his life, and he just turned 92 this year and seems to keep going on and on. But both of these men make excellent role models and biography subjects for young children. So you can use this book to kind of introduce them. I conducted a lesson with a group of students after reading Just Like Jesse Owens, and I asked them to identify who their role models were. And so we talked about how Jesse inspired my dad and what he learned from his example. And then the students drew pictures of their heroes, listed their character traits, and then wrote about what inspired them most. I've spent the last 20 years teaching civil rights to first graders. And one of the challenges is that, fortunately, these children have never had to experience segregation and that level of discrimination. And so therefore, it's difficult for them to really understand some of the injustices and relate to them. I find it helpful to look at these historical events from a child's perspective, focusing on the impact of segregation and discrimination on children, as well as looking at children as agents of change. In this story, the children defy segregation by playing together, even against the wishes of the adults. That little boy with the nickel proved that he was an ally. And I hope this story helps students to see themselves as allies and activists and able to bring about change in their own lives. My grandfather, who we called Daddy Boo, had a mantra, and he would tell my dad, "Don't get mad, get smart." That was a guiding principle throughout my father's life. He was notorious for keeping his cool during the civil rights movement when he was surrounded by a lot of hot-headed Baptist preachers and racist Southern sheriffs. And in the United Nations, He negotiated with Black African freedom fighters, as well as white South Africans trying to maintain apartheid. We need to teach our children to think first and then act, to listen and respect differences, and to value helping others and to see how critical that is. Don't get mad, get smart means that you find ways to work together rather than just how to defeat your opponent. It's about figuring out ways to make the world a better place for everyone. If you are studying the Olympics, and we've got one coming up in 2024, this could be a way to look at the impact of the Olympics throughout history. And the story of Jesse Owens winning 4 gold medals in Nazi Germany is definitely a highlight. And there is so much more to learn about that experience, of how Jesse refused to run until his Jewish teammates, who had been banned from the games, encouraged him to win on their behalf. How Jesse made a lifelong friend of his German competitor, Luz Long, the silver medalist to his gold in the long jump. And of how gold medalist Jesse Owens arrived at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City for a banquet in his honor and was not allowed in the front door because of segregation in America. These are the stories we need to continue to tell and share and help our children understand the truth about our history. In addition to using the story as a way to teach values and content, it is also a very useful tool for teaching writing skills. Writing is my passion. I love it, and I love to teach it. And there are all kinds of ways to use this book as a model for writing lessons. For example, lyrical threes, which I love to use, are throughout this book. There's the repetition of head up, back straight, eyes focused. There is the line about running and tagging and playing. There's another line that says the athletes ran, jumped, and threw as the audience applauded. And one of my favorites is when it says the best part of the whole film was Jesse Owens, a runner who looked like me, winning over and over and over again. It says we ran and ran and ran that day like we were in the Olympics. And it talks about playing harder, working harder, and trying harder to be the best. You can introduce the kids to these lyrical threes, let them add their own to their writing and experiment with that. It's also got lots of dialogue and dialogue tags so that it talks about how someone started and taunted and threatened and just different ways to say said. I always tell my kids, said is dead. You've got to find something new to say. In addition to that, it's a first-person narrative. So as children are writing their own stories, they can look at this example because it's a story told from a child's perspective, and it describes things that kids do, like playing baseball or playing tag or going to the movies. And, having this model for the kids before they start telling their own stories makes it easier for the children to imagine their own stories coming to life on the page. And when you are talking about adding those describing details, I love to really urge my students to use all of their senses, to use the sight, what they see and hear, and what they feel, what it smells like. And there are examples in this book that add those describing details to motivate and inspire students to add their own to the stories. And so I think there are a number of ways that you can try to use the story to teach a number of lessons. And I've started to add a few of them on my website. So check it out. And if it's not there now, it'll be there later. But I really hope that you enjoy reading this story to your students just for the pleasure of reading, but there are also so many ways for you to use it to teach those skills that we all know we've got to introduce when we're teaching young children. And I hope that it will help inspire some new writers and new activists as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Paula, just like as teachers, we love reading to students. I know that there are quite a few people who were in the chat that loved being read to by you. So thank you so much. Now we will be joined by Duncan Tonatiuh. Duncan is an award-winning author, illustrator. He is both Mexican and American. He grew up in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, and graduated from Parsons School of Design and Eugene Lang College in New York City. His artwork is inspired by pre-Columbian art, particularly that of the Mixtec codices. His aim is to create images and stories that honor the past, but that are relevant to people, especially children today. His most recent publication, A Land of Books, Dreams of Young Mexica Word Painters, published by Harry and Abrams, is featured on the children's and teachers' favorite list. Please welcome Duncan Tonatiuh.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be a part of this program. Thank you to the ILA for all that you do and getting books into kids' hands and into providing teachers with resources. And thank you, Ken, for the shout out to my book, Dear Primo. Dear Primo was the first book that I published. And it's very dear to me. And it's about two cousins, one that lives in a rural community in Mexico and one that lives in an urban center in the US, who send letters to each other back and forth. And if you haven't seen any of my books, you may be able to notice that I have a very peculiar way of drawing. My characters in the books are always in profile, looking to the side. We never see them with both eyes looking straight ahead. Their ears, look a little bit like a number 3 or a letter E. A kid once told me that they kind of look like the slices of a mushroom on a pizza. And the way I draw hands and feet and ears is pretty unique too. It's very stylized. And the reason that I draw this way is because I'm inspired by Mesoamerican art, by pre-Columbian art, by people like the Mixtecs, the Aztecs or Mexica, the Mayas who made books. In Mesoamerica, before the Spanish and other Europeans arrived, there was this rich bookmaking tradition, and people made books that were really long and folded out like accordions. And in these books, people told the history of their warriors, their kings, their gods. And so when I saw these drawings, I was inspired by these drawings to make my artwork. I grew up in Mexico, and to be honest, as a kid, what I liked were comic books, were manga. But then I came to the US as a teenager. I attended art school. And after being away from Mexico for many years, I began to miss some things that were around me. And I really became interested more in the art of Mexico and the culture of Mexico. And so when I saw these drawings that I had seen as a kid in like my textbooks, but I saw them again as an adult years later, I was really taken aback by how, geometric they are, by how the repetition of color, by how flat and stylized they are. And that's why I started drawing like this. And, this was my first book, and I've made, I think my 15th book that I've worked on is coming out this fall. And all my books have pretty much illustrated in this style. But so for one of my latest books, for A Land of Books, that I want to share a little bit with you today, I wanted to learn more about the people that made books in Mesoamerican times. Why did they make books? How did they make them? And one of the wonderful things about being an author and an illustrator is that I can research those things that interest me, that I care about, that I, hopefully I can learn about those things, and I feel like I can try to distill it and hopefully turn it into an interesting story, into an interesting book for young readers to enjoy and to hopefully learn also something from. So I'll share my screen and tell you some more of the things that I learned from this book. let me share with you, and that way you can look at the illustrations a little bit more. I'm very happy with how the book turned out. Here you go. I'm assuming everyone can see the screen. If not, please let me know. But yeah, so the book is called A Land of Books, and it's called A Land of Books. It's a word in Nahuatl, Amoxtlalpan, and because there were all these different groups, the Mayas, the Mexica, the Mixtecs that made books. And so here is this young girl telling her brother that their land is an Amoxtlalpan, a land of books, and that they, that live in the valley of the volcanoes, the mighty Mexica, are bookmakers as well. And that her parents, that their parents are Tlacuiloque, which means painters of words. And the books that they make, you know, they fold like that, like accordions. They're long strips of paper. Some people like the Mixtecs painted on the hides of deers, but the Mexica actually painted on paper that they made from the amacahuitl tree. So here she tells her brother of the process for making the paper from the bark of the amacahuitl tree, you know, how they pound it into a pulp that they mix with limestone, how they pat it down to then make the sheets of paper. She also tells them about how they obtain the different colors from different plants, from different minerals, from ashes, even from insects. How, for example, to obtain the red color, they would collect these cochinillo insects that lived on the nopali, on the cactus, on the cacti. And they would dry them and crush them, and that's what they would use. They would mix that with clay and water to make red paint. She tells them that her parents not only make books, but they're also in charge of painting murals and of creating sculptures about the different gods and the different warriors. And she tells them that one day they will be painters of words too, but that they will have to attend a special school called the Calmecac, where they'll take classes alongside warriors, alongside the nobility, princesses and prince, because Tlacuiloque were very highly regarded in Mexica society. And they had to know about science, about religion, about warfare, to be able to paint all that knowledge in books. One thing that is very different about Mesoamerican books is that they didn't have any letters in them. They only had drawings, but the drawings could be read. And that's one of the reasons why the drawings are so stylized, because you know, the position of hands, the color that a person is wearing means something, gives you clues as to who this person is. The different symbols can represent where something is happening, what year it's happening. You know, maybe there's having an alliance, maybe they're having a discussion. So these books could be read, but not everyone knew how to read the Amoxtin, as they were called by the Mexica. Multiple Amoxtin or an Amoxtli. Amoxtli is singular. Only the priest, only the nobility was able to read these books. But sometimes, and I thought that this was something very neat that I learned while I was making this book, is that there were book readings where the different villagers, you know, the farmers, the fishermen could come, and there would be these book readings that would happen during different festivals, during different ceremonies, and there would be a singer that would sing the words that were painted on the books, and it was a big performance, a big celebration. But so the girl tells her brother that tonight, before they go to bed, they should dream of books. And this is my favorite part of the book, because here the siblings are asleep and they start dreaming about books that are about the different gods and the creation of the universe, books that are about the different legends and the history of their people, like the legend of how the god Blue Hummingbird spoke to their ancestors and told them to go on a pilgrimage and search for a sign, which was this eagle on top of a cactus, of a nopali, and that there they should settle and build their mighty city, the city of Tenochtitlan. Books that are about the different, their different Tlatoani, the different governors and the alliances they made, the different places they've conquered, the different tributes that conquered people must send them. Books that are calendars. You know, nowadays we call the days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but the Mexica called them crocodile, the wind, house, lizard. And they believed that each week lasted 13 days and that each week was ruled by a different god, like the god Tonatiuh, the god of the sun. And so then there were wise elders that would interpret these books, these almanacs, to try and determine what dates were auspicious for important events like weddings, planting corn, launching an attack. And then she tells her brother to also dream of books that are about the movements of the stars or about what plants or illnesses they cure. But then she tells her brother to wake up because it's time to go to the flower festival. And at the flower festival, there's going to be a book reading where a book that their parents made is going to be read. And here at the book reading, there's a singer that sings the words that are painted on the book. And there's musicians that play music as the book is being read. There's dancers that dance as the book is being read. And there's incense that burns as the book is being read. And then the sister tells the brother that she hopes that their world will always be a Namaxtlalpan, a land of books. And in the end, there's a little glossary because I have some words in Nahuatl, which is it's a language that many indigenous people in Mexico speak still today, but it's the language that the Mexica and other people in the central region spoke. And there's some images of, nowadays we refer to the books that were made in Mesoamerican times as codices. So it says from a codex. This is one page from it, and here's the whole book. You know, you can see how long it is. And here I'll stop sharing. Basically, yeah. So I'm very happy with this book, and you know, one of the messages that I hope the book conveys is that that there was this strong tradition, you know, of bookmaking. Sadly, what happened is that, you know, when the Spanish and other Europeans came to this continent, most of these books were destroyed. We don't know how many books existed before, but probably in the thousands, if not more. Most of them were destroyed and burned. Very few, they were destroyed during the conquest. And then later on, different priests thought that, you know, they didn't agree with the beliefs of the Mexica and it didn't agree with their religion, so they would destroy them. They would burn them. So only about 15 Mesoamerican books survive. But, you know, hopefully, you know, this book will help young readers learn about this and how there was this strong art tradition and bookmaking tradition. And I think especially for Latino children, you know, to know that, you know, they come from this rich artistic tradition and that, you know, books had a long history in this part of the world. So that's one thing that I hope the book will accomplish. And just briefly, one thing that, you know, that I do is that I draw, you know, I make my drawings by hand in this style, but then you may have noticed that I put a lot of textures. And so what I do for that, since I have my computer here, I'll show you really quick. And hopefully that makes an interesting thing of something that's a little, you know, ancient looking, but also a little modern looking, is that I take a drawing. Let me open a drawing. Sorry about that. I thought I had it open. That I draw by hand, but then I collage different textures into it. So for example, for the hands, I use this this texture of this brown paper, just a paper bag that they gave me at the supermarket. And then I can select it. And then I can, I gotta copy it. And then I go here and I paste into it. And I do that for the different areas. You know, here I can give her jeans.
Sorry, Mr. Duncan, can you share your screen? We can't see your screen. We just see you.
Sorry, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, let me go back on Zoom. Share screen. Sorry. Yes, so sorry about that. So here's, you know, a drawing that I made. And I scan my drawing And then I have different textures that I use. So for example, this is the brown paper bag that I mentioned, and I can select it and I can copy it, and then I just paste into my drawing. And, you know, I can do that for the jeans, or different textures, like using this one. And so hopefully it's you know, an interesting combination of things that feel a little old, but also a little new. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful and interesting to you.
Duncan, thank you so much for sharing your passion for Mesoamerican art, culture, and sharing the history of bookmaking. If you get a chance, there was a lot of appreciation and gratitude showed to you in the chat. So take a look at that. People love your art and we really appreciate your work. We will now be joined by our final author, Jennifer Keats Curtis. Jennifer has penned 25 realistic fiction and nonfiction stories about animals. Her passion for wildlife and her inability to stop asking why compels her to follow scientists and experts around begging for information. She can be found in classrooms encouraging research, writing, reading, and a desire to help wild animals in the right ways. Her latest publication with Julianne Ubigwat is Pooper Snooper, which was mentioned earlier in the presentation, published by Arbordale Publishing and featured on the children's favorite list. And children love the book. And I have to say, I love Pooper Snooper too. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer Keats Curtis.
Thank you. Thank you all. Kia, did you pick, how do I get to be following those two? Really? Oh my gosh, that was wonderful. Wow. You know, and I'm going to talk about poop. Like, how does this happen? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if I can pull this up so I can talk from, let's see, from this, make it a lot easier for everybody. And I frequently call what I do helping animals one book at a time, because that is how I feel about my stories. I get to find out what is happening to animals and why and who helps them. And this has launched me into working with groups of scientists in order to create these books. So what I frequently tell kids is that I don't have a science background, but that I speak scientist. So over the years, I've had a chance to work with these different scientists in order to tell stories about the work that they do. I have an 8-year-old brain, so my job is to get it down to a level that I can understand and then write about it. Pooper Snooper is the story, the true story about this woman here. Her name is Julianne Ubigo, and this is her dog, Samson. And together they are a canine detective team who snoop poop in order to find endangered animals. The illustrator for this book is a wonderful woman named Phyllis Saroff, who also happens to be a dog trainer. So she was perfect to do the illustrations for this story. And in fact, we have worked together on 2 other books, the realistic fiction Creek Critters and the nonfiction Maggie, Alaska's Last Elephant. So Pooper Snooper is a very fun story because not only do you get to talk about poop and dogs, but the ways that these animals can work with scientists in order to make really important discoveries. Not any dog can be a pooper snooper. Some dogs are just pets. This is my rescue, Tilly, and he could not make it as a pooper snooper. Some animals just like to hang out with their pets, so they're not going to be good pooper snoopers. Some animals do not have the right anatomy to be pooper snoopers. This is a basset hound, and even though those long ears help her scoop up the smell to her nose, pooper snoopers have to be dogs that sniff in the air. So they have long snouts and they can smell the scent in one place to follow it. And Samson is some sort of a Labrador Retriever mix, but he has the perfect anatomy, at least, to be a pooper snooper. In the story, as in real life, Julie taught Samson, this dog, how to find the scat of a very endangered critter. In most cases, the dogs that are selected by these scientists are rescued from shelters, and they are in shelters because they have been returned time and again because all they want to do is play ball 24 hours a day, which might be fun, but awfully tough for some families. So scientists have figured out how to use that kind of drive to find different targets, including scat, and then the dogs get a ball as a reward. So Samson, for example, these are some of the targets that he was taught to look for, and Julie worked with him in different settings in order to be able to help him figure out where they were. When we first started talking about pooper snooper, there were all sorts of different animals that we could have looked for, and I thought it would be nice to start small. So Samson is credited with finding the most endangered rodent in North America. This cute little mouse is called a Pacific pocket mouse, and the only place in the whole world we can find them is on one tiny little colony in California. They are, in fact, so endangered that scientists thought they could be extinct until Samson was able to find him. In order to train Samson, Julie had to go over rough terrain and all sorts of difficult conditions in order to teach him how to find that scat. This is a Pacific pocket mouse burrow, a hole, and you can see that is not a very big burrow, and it is not a very big mouse. And you can imagine then how small that scat is. This is indeed the Pacific pocket mouse scat that was found. It is on the sand, and before Samson came along and figured out how to use his nose to find that, scientists were using tweezers and digging through sand in order to find that. And you can imagine they did not have any luck at doing that. It took a dog to be able to find that. That's how small the scat is. The whole idea of this kind of detection is to use the ball as a reward. And working with Julie, we were able to write her story about how this works and how these dogs are such wonderful dogs. They are working dogs. They love to work, and then they get the ball as a reward. This is Casey, another dog that she also worked with, and there's the blue ball that he loved to get as a reward for that. When Julie and I go into schools, we do different things with the kids who are there. For Julie, she focuses on how much fun science is and the important part of scent detection and scatology and why it is so important, and how she became a canine trainer and a scientist who looks for the scat of those endangered animals. She gets to talk to them about going out into the field and using Samson in these places in order to sniff to find that scat. In some cases, scat is easier to find than others. She even gets to bring her dogs into school. So if you can see Samson's sign here, it says, "Good morning, class. My name is Samson, and I am a retired conservation biologist who will be your teacher for today. I want to inspire you to love science as much as I do. If I can change the world, so can you." So these are the kind of tools that Julie gets to take in when she goes into classrooms in order to work with kids. I mean, look at these kids with Casey. Yeah, pretty fun. But we make the connections. She reads the stories. She helps them explain the science, how the book was written, and then introduces them to the dogs and some of the ways that the dogs are trained, and so that they can become pooper snoopers. On occasion, she gets to take people out to show them how to look for scat, sometimes kids as well. That's what she's doing right there. And we were able to put some of that information together into the For Creative Minds section of the back of this book, Pooper Snooper. There are 4 pages in the back there. For me, sometimes, as you can imagine, I can't always take a dog into school with me. Some schools frown upon that. So I always have to think of creative ways in order to work with the kids to get them excited about nonfiction, about the details in this story, and what they might be able to use from the story in order to write stories of their own. Phyllis Saroff, who is the illustrator and a dog trainer, I was able to interview her and write up a part about the way that she trains her dogs. And we use sometimes that information to convince teachers to bring their dog in. This is Pippa, and to run through some of the drills explained in that book. Here's Pippa chasing a ball at school. And the kids were supposed to write down opinions about whether or not Pippa could be a pooper snooper. So every kid got to write an opinion about that. And then Julie and I secretly talked about that. And then she created a video for them to talk about what she had seen and what Pippa did right, and her review of whether or not Pippa could be a pooper snooper. So the kids got to see that in action, and they got to write an opinion piece as well. And that was a really fun way to be able to teach them that. The other thing that we've done for teachers and literacy coaches who are looking for ideas to use in schools and classrooms is one of my teachers created a game in order to enhance the comprehension of this story. So you can see this is the first part of the board here. Sometimes Samson loses the scent, sometimes he does not. She's got the answers set up for this, including details about the story and what type of story it is, all sneakily in this fun game. And then the answers, and then the answers in the back for that. So the kids love playing this game. It was a great way to increase vocabulary and more fully explain to them some of the information in the story. The other way that we have used the book in schools is through a paint night. A lot of schools that I work with on the Eastern Shore of Maryland are Title I schools, and we do a lot of evening events for families. And one of the things that we have found is really fun is to do paint nights. So I go in and I read the story with the kids and the families. We talk about what a nonfiction is and the information that's in that story. And then in this case, an art teacher came in and taught the kids and parents how to paint a dog. Now, some of the kids got more paint on their faces than on their actual paintings, but it was a wonderful way to create those connections between literacy and art as well. And everybody got to take their paintings home, even those who didn't paint their faces. I was listening to some of the information Paula was talking about the details and how she encourages her writers to use details. And I love that. We also spend a lot of time talking about that with kids. And the dog is a great way to work that into a quick writing exercise. If you just say the word dog, there's lots of different kinds of dogs. Who knows what kind of dogs you are talking about? So we think about different senses, what they smell like, what kind of fur they have, what kind of noises they make, and the kids draw that, and it might be a dog from the story, but it might not. And then they write around the art what it is that what they are seeing, what they are hearing, and then they put it into a story. Fun way to make those connections. And the other thing that we've been doing with some of the stories is to help have the kids create their own books. I don't know why this is sideways, I'm sorry. So once they learn that information and we do the research, then they're able to write stories of their own. All fun ways, I hope, that you might be able to use in your classrooms as well in order to help your kids understand how that works. And I'm sorry, Julie cannot be here with me today. She is in Borneo on an orangutan conservation effort right now. She won't be back in country until the end of the month. Thank you for having me and letting me talk about Pooper Snooper. I appreciate being here. Hopefully you can use some of those in your classrooms.
Thank you so much. There's a lot of love in the chat for the book and for you. I just have to say, just thank you, Jennifer, and to all the authors who have shared their work with us today. I was trying to think of just a quick 6-word summary because there's been a lot of just amazing insight and information shared. And my 6 words about what we've seen so far are literacy, uplifting choice, diverse voice, accuracy. So, right, that historical accuracy, making sure we're hearing those authentic voices and uplifting student and teacher choice is so critical. Please feel free to share in the chat just some of the words that come to mind as you think of what the authors have shared with us today. And then we'll move on to the next part of our program. And so we are going to now announce the winners of the 2023 ILA Children's and Young Adult Book Awards. So we will be joined by the awards committee chair, Sonia Ezel, who will do the honors. Sonia is a clinical assistant professor and former K-3 reading coach. She is an avid supporter of classroom, school, and local libraries, and shares her love of multicultural picture books with educators, pre-service teachers, and parents. Please welcome Sonia Ezel.
Thank you, Kia. I'm very excited to officially announce the winners of this year's ILA Children's and Young Adult Book Awards. For the primary fiction winner, Young Vu for Gibberish, publisher Levine Quirito. Primary fiction honor, Pearl Young for The Best Kind of Mooncake, publisher Page Street Kids. Okay. Moving on, primary nonfiction winner, Shaylin McDaniel for Hello Opportunity, The Story of Our Friend on Mars, publisher Page Street Kids. Primary nonfiction honor, Justin Anderson for Neural, The Arctic Unicorn, publisher Candlewick Press. Moving on, intermediate nonfiction honor. Intermediate, let me make sure, intermediate fiction winner, Sarah Guillory for Nowhere Better Than Here, publisher Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Intermediate fiction honor, C.C. Harrington for Wild Oak, publisher Scholastic. Okay. Moving on, intermediate nonfiction winner, Barbara Benz for Unlawful Orders, a portrait of Dr. James B. Williams, Tuskegee Airman, surgeon, and activist, publisher Scholastic. Intermediate nonfiction honor, Olivia Meikle and Katie Nelson for The Book of Sisters, biographies of incredible siblings through history, publisher Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Okay. Young adult fiction winner, Andrea L. Rogers for Man-Made Monsters, publisher Levine Quirito. Young adult fiction honor, Jazz Hammonds for We Deserve Monuments, publisher Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Moving on, young adult nonfiction winner, Jetta Grace Martin, Joshua Bloom, and Waldo E. Martin Jr. for Freedom, the Story of the Black Panther Party, publisher Levine Quirito. And young adult nonfiction honor, Achute Dang and Keely Hutton for Don't Look Back, a memoir of war, survival, and my journey from Sudan to America, publisher Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Congratulations to all of this year's award winners.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again to all of the award winners. I would like to thank everyone for their fantastic presentations and the conversation that we've had during today's session. The notes that were in the chat, it just was very inspiring and also informative. In addition, I would like to thank Arbordale Publishing, Levine Quirito, and the American College of Education for being supporters of this event. And of course, I would like to extend a hearty thanks to all of you joining from all around the world. My heart was leaping for joy when I saw all of the places that you were joining us from. I know some places it's morning, some places it's afternoon, some places it's night. So we just appreciate you joining us for this presentation.